Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I want to make the argument and make the case of music theory doesn't hinder creativity, and you can't change my mind. Let's get into it. So what is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. My name is Ray. I'm a guitar player here on YouTube, and I wanted to make this video. I felt inspired to make this video because I made a video and dropped a video last week talking about my baritone riffs and talking about my theory knowledge and how I use music theory to create. And that video did very, very well. Now, in said video, I said leave down below in the comment section any questions and or discrepancies about theory. And a lot of you guys participated, which I really appreciate. And several of you said, I'm really struggling with theory. I'm having a hard time grasping it, as well as, do we even need to know theory and or learn theory because we're playing metal music? And so this kind of just triggered that cliche old saying, quote unquote cliche, because it's an age-old saying of music theory will hinder my creativity, so I don't want to learn it, right? We've all heard that. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is a bunch of baloney. And I'm here to tell you why. Now, before we go any further, this is all in good fun, man. I'm not here to create a literal argument and get heated. I'm here to hang out and have some fun and just have a conversation with you guys, okay? So if you thought I was gonna get heated and start, naming or bashing names or whatever, this is certainly, not my type of content. And for those of you regular viewers, you guys know my demeanor and what I like to do here on the YouTube on my YouTube channel. So yeah, this is all in good fun, and this is just a conversation piece, okay? All right. So I'll say it again. Music theory does not hinder creativity, does not hinder writing, does not hinder your ability to play the guitar well. And it wasn't until that I actually learned theory. I'm still learning it, and I'll forever be trying to master it. It's a never-ending game. Video game with a million levels, right? You can never beat the game. You can never get too good at music theory. So it wasn't until I had several years, about half a decade under my belt of studying music theory religiously every single day. That's when I started to have the epiphany of man, this is great stuff. I'm so mad at myself for not taking music theory seriously when I was younger, and I'm kicking myself for wasting so much time not learning this stuff. So it wasn't until I was, like I said, I'll say it again, it wasn't until I was several years into my music theory journey to where I understood how important it really is. And I was always, told, and I even would tell myself that music theory would hinder my creative ability and my creative writing process. And that's just a bunch of crap, man. It really is. So why are we as metal and rock guitar players and, rock musicians, we'll just say in general, why are we so against learning music theory? And I think there's a couple reasons why, but honestly, the one that stood out for me, now I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but the one that stood out for me, and it wasn't until I put my ego aside, it wasn't until that I did that I realized that, man, I was afraid. I was afraid of being vulnerable, I was afraid of looking stupid, and I was afraid of, being in a situation that was uncomfortable and I didn't know what I was doing on the guitar. At the time, when I was starting to learn music theory, I had been playing guitar for about a decade. And, I thought I was rather proficient at the guitar technically and physically, but in terms of what the hell I was doing, up top and on the fretboard, man, I was completely clueless. I had no idea what I was doing in terms of theory. It wasn't until, like I said, I put my ego aside and I got put on blast several times in a classroom setting around other phenomenal jazz musicians that I realized, hey, man, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to learn it, and I got to put my ego in check. And I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to that, whether they'll admit it or not. Hey, man, I ain't trying to impress anybody. I'll admit it. I was, afraid to be put into a vulnerable spot where I all of a sudden didn't know what a major seventh was, or, where all the A notes were on the fretboard, even though I thought I was a really good guitar player because I'd been playing for about a decade. Another reason why I think metal and rock guitar players don't want to learn theory is because it is not very cool. And I'm being, calling it how it is. It's not very cool. Taking book smarts and, I don't know, classroom setting knowledge and applying it to Cannibal Corpse, it doesn't really translate so well, and it's not exactly the coolest thing in the world. I get it. I'd be the first one to admit there's something inherently rebellious about, rock and roll, about punk music, metal music. They're all kind of lumped into the same thing where it's we have an attitude. We have, like I said, I had an ego. We had our personas that were told to convey and that we convey ourselves when playing metal music. It's like, you know, it's uncool to like, you know, pretend like you care, or, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's just not, it's not cool to like be smart or like, you know, be a nerd or whatever you mean, like a book nerd. You know what I mean? School's not cool in the world of rock and metal and, you know, like I said, punk music. So I think that over time has lasted to where, like, you know, oh, we don't need to know the book stuff. We just need to chug and just make it heavy and make it scream, right? You know, that's what we tell ourselves. And last but not least, man, I'll just say I think there's a lack of translation there from why theory doesn't make it into metal music, is because we can play metal music without any theory. It's one of the very few genres, in my opinion, after playing guitar for nearly 2 decades, to where, like, you can get away with zero theory and still make phenomenal sounds and phenomenal songs. I mean, like jazz, there's no way in hell you can play jazz without knowing theory. Like, that is a genre built around theory. You know what I mean? I think you have to be a better music theorist than an actual musician to play jazz. It's really inspiring to be around jazz musicians. Also, too, blues. You got to know theory. You got to know, you know, like where the 12-bar blues, you know, starts and ends. You got to know your 1-4-5 chord progressions. You know, you got to know your minor pentatonics, all 5 shapes across the fretboard. You got to know what the relative majors and minors are. You got to know where the blues note is, the tritone note, etc. You got to know just basic fundal core ideas with blues music, you know? So, like, you got to know theory for that. I could keep going on and on, but to keep this video going, metal music, man, you can know absolutely zero theory and just, like, come up with, you know, the cliches of, like, I don't know, just like sounds cool, and I chug, and then like I do this and I make this solo and it just fits, right? We could skate by and we can have a career with those, you know, those sayings and those phrases of, like, I don't know, it just sounds heavy, it sounds cool. I don't know anything about theory, but I know what I like and I know the sounds that I want to make. And that's fine. And I'm certainly not sitting here telling you that if you don't know theory, you know, you're a bad guitar player. But for those of you who want to know theory, it's kind of translating, or it's hard to translate, like, well, why do I need to know theory if, you know, I already know how to play guitar and I can already, you know, get around not knowing theory and play great metal and rock music? And honestly, I don't have an answer for that. You know, that is something that is a very, very good question. I'll ask it again just so we're on the same page. Why do I need to know theory if I can already play metal music really, really well? And honestly, I can't answer that. The only way I could answer that indirectly and kind of like a spin on that question is, like, you gotta want to learn theory. You have to want to learn theory. And again, I've also been hit with the next question of, like, well, why? And again, it's a good question. Like, well, why do you want to learn it? So, you know, you have to ask yourself that actual question. So I'll answer that question as to why I wanted to learn theory. I wanted to learn theory because I wanted to master the instrument. I was so tired of not knowing where the notes were on the fretboard. I was so tired of pretending like I knew what I was doing, but I really had no clue, man. I couldn't speak the language. I couldn't speak the musician language. At the end of the day, I want to consider myself as a musician, not as a metal guitar player. And I don't really even know why I want to do that, other than I guess I just want to just get as good as I can at the guitar, at the instrument, right? You know, why does anybody do anything in life? You know, just because they enjoy it. And that's just something that I have inside of me, where I'm trying my very best to master the instrument, and I'm trying to continually get better and better. And I don't want to just, like, stop learning as soon as I get really, really good at metal music. You know, I feel like I hit that wall at, like, a 10-year mark where, like, I wasn't getting any better, and the only way to go was up. And the only way to go up, in my opinion, and get better was to actually incorporate some music theory into metal music. Now, this will be a bit of a hot take, but I can hear it right now, and let's address it. I know a lot of people in the comments section, they probably didn't even watch this far into the video. They're already going to start saying this. They're going to give a laundry list of incredible rock and metal musicians who publicly say they don't know theory and they're multi-millionaire, you know, platinum selling artists. You know what? There's a lot of them, and you know what? A lot of people did that and are still doing that. And you know what? That's really great, you know, like, that's awesome. I can't fault that, and I'm not here to bash any of those individual people. I'll name 2 people right off the bat. I mean, one, Kurt Cobain didn't know any theory and is arguably one of the best singer-songwriters and guitar players of all time. Certainly one of the most successful. I mean, can't deny that, right? And I'll even go one step further. This is a hot take. Jim Root, in my own interview, because I know you guys are going to bring it up. Jim Root said it in my own interview. I don't want to learn theory because I don't want it to hinder my own creative process. I don't want to think like, oh, well, I can't play a major seventh or whatever his example was because it doesn't fit theory-wise. I can already hear you guys bringing that up. And you know what? I can't argue that. That was his words, not mine, and that's his way of thinking and his way of wanting to explore the guitar, right? However, we, everyday folk, don't have the luxury of being in the biggest theatrical metal band of all time. You know what I mean? Like, they're the most current, relevant, you know, I mean, people will say Metallica, but I think Metallica's kind of like at like legend status already, you know what I mean? They're kind of up there with like the Stones, or you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're kind of like, they're like way past their prime. They're just like on legacy mode right now. Where I think Slipknot is just before that, and they're still climbing. And, you know, like I said, we everyday folks don't have the luxury of just being in the biggest metal band of all time, where we don't need theory and still make a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, we ain't got it like that. Furthermore, Jim Root is one of the most technically proficient and just amazing guitar players on the planet. He worked very, very hard, obviously growing up playing guitar, you know, probably religiously and practicing to where now, you know, he set himself up for success. And although he claims he doesn't know music theory, he kind of does it, you know. He does more than I think he thinks he does, you know what I mean? But anyway, just getting on track here, it's like he worked so hard to get that job, to get that gig of being in Slipknot, that, you know, he didn't even need theory, and his technical abilities is what I'm trying to say, got him that job alone. Where that translates for me and doesn't resonate with me is like, I don't have his technical abilities. I'm not nearly as technically gifted, and there's a lot of better guitar players out in the world than I, to where like I need everything possible to help me succeed, you know what I mean? I can't rely on my technical abilities as a guitar player, so I'm doing my very best to, you know, supplement my playing in other ways, and music theory is exactly that. I just can't rely on my technical abilities alone, you know what I mean? Whereas Jim Root definitely could, because, you know, he's in my favorite metal band of all time and the biggest metal band in the world, and he's just an amazing player and great guy too. So I can hear a lot of people saying, I don't want to learn theory because insert metal musician doesn't know theory. I'm just going to continue to just write heavy chugs and, you know, just try to make it that way. And you know what? I can't fault you. But for me, in my own personal brain, that doesn't sit well with me, because to me, that is like saying like, I don't want to make more money. I don't want to like better myself. I'm just going to keep playing the lottery until I hit the jackpot one day. You know, that could be a crude kind of analogy, but that's just how my own personal brain works. It's like, why wouldn't you try to better yourself in every single way possible? You know what I mean? Somebody who knows theory and somebody who's a master musician and somebody I look up to and kind of took the journeyman's road is like John Five. You know, he was a session musician, session player, played with everybody, played, you know, with like country players and played with rock players, was a session musician in LA. Then all of a sudden just started getting these awesome dream metal gigs, you know, like Marilyn Manson. He went from like a sessions player to playing The Beautiful People, one of the easiest metal riffs of all time. Then he was with Rob Zombie, and then he was with his own solo career. So like he did it backwards, where like he learned theory and cut his teeth and just like had his chops and his brain all together encompassing to be an insane session musician, and then kept going up and up and up, and then finally got the dream metal gig. So now I feel so inspired by John Five's story, for example, where like, you know, he kind of just played with everybody and played all kinds of genres and, you know, whatever, and then made it a little bit later in life and got the dream metal gigs. I'm inspired by that, and like I see myself kind of in that, and you know, maybe not necessarily in at any like magnitude of John Five. Like, don't get it twisted, but I'm just saying, you know, I'm still in my 20s, but like I'm not like 17 starting a brand new band and I'm gonna be signed by the time I'm 19. You know what I mean? Like, I'm certainly like taking a very unique approach myself, you know, being in the Army, then starting a YouTube channel, and then doing my very best to continue to try to make it that way, right? So I take a lot of inspiration from John Five, for example, and I apply that to my own life, where it's like, I want to be as good as I possibly can. And I think I would be doing a disservice to myself and my future by not wanting to better myself and not wanting to learn music theory, for example. We hear it all the time. The market is so saturated. The internet is so saturated. There's so many musicians out there, right? So many guitar players. And you know what? You're absolutely right. And it's extremely stressful and extremely pressure inducing. So for me, it's like I want to create my best version of myself and be as good as I possibly can, well-rounded, and learning music theory will only help me in the long run. And whatever endeavor I end up being, whatever that ends up, whatever the end road, the end game is, I'm very happy with where I'm at now with my current projects, current bands, etc. But I could still be better for those bands that I'm in right now. You know what I mean? And what I just said right there is what I always tell people, man. Anybody who asks me is like, hey, why should I learn music theory? Do I need to learn music theory? I say yes, 1,000% of the time, because at the end of the day, man, we're all competing against each other, and we only got a small window of time before we can quote unquote make it, before we're, yesterday's news, right? So in my opinion, you got to do everything possible to make yourself the best guitar player you possibly can, and really, really, really work extremely hard and be the best version of yourself. And one final thing I'll say, not every good and or successful guitar player knows theory, but generally speaking, every guitar player who knows theory is a good guitar player. And I'll leave it at that. So everybody, that's my video on how I disagree with the statement of music theory will hinder your creativity. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and we'll be sure to have a nice, cordial discussion. I hope it's cordial. Yeah, I just want to hang out with you guys in the comments, okay? So everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to my channel, you want to consider subscribing, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay metal. And I'll see you guys next time. Later.